Hi, welcome to Between Two Urns, another episode of it. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but we're trying to get people in who are, rich with beer culture and experience, and I don't think you can look too far without finding Hayden Henderson, who is a fantastic brewer as well as passionate about sour beers. So we're going to talk to him a little bit today about some of the beers he makes, what drives his passion for brewing, and maybe some tips and tricks about how to do these beers, which can be quite complicated, and a totally different approach to brewing. So welcome, Hayden.
Thanks, Daniel. Good to see you, mate.
Good to be here. Yeah, of course. But it's been a year since we've done one of these, so it is finally good to be back in the studio, be able to talk about this kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about you, your background, how'd you get into brewing?
All right. So by job, I'm a industrial chemist. So I've always been passionate about the scientific side of brewing and the like. I moved to Perth about 10 years ago. One weekend I got bored and went and bought a kit and kilo kit from the local homebrew store over there. Did that for a couple of years, made some very, very bad beer, as you do with kit and kilo.
Yeah.
And then discovered something called all grain brewing and went and got a sort of do-it-yourself system.
Was this like a 3-vessel system?
No, it was a single vessel. It was like the precursor to the Guten. Like, it was a homemade by the local homebrew stop in Perth, Brew Mart. Then I brewed an IPA, and I remember opening that first IPA from the kit I bought, and I went, that's drinkable. Like, this is. I was like, it wasn't blown away by it, but I'm going, this isn't far off a craft beer, And then I went brewing, and I kept brewing and brewing and brewing, and I thought I was really good. And then I joined a brew club called the West Coast Brewers, and I realised I really wasn't very good until when I started tasting these guys' beers and how good people could brew homebrew. Learn a lot from the brew club. After I'd been there for about another year, I got offered a job in Melbourne. My family and I moved over here about 4 years ago now. Joined my local brew club, the Melbourne Brewers, melbournebrewers.org, just a little plug there for anyone. Competition coming up in a week, so get your entries in for Beer Fest.
That's Beer Fest. That's right.
So Melbourne Brewers there, guys, final plug. And then entered a competition there, which was Beer Fest 3 years ago, won it. Best in show, one of the prizes was a Fermentasaurus with a
that's right.
Gen 1 Fermentasaurus with a dump valve on it. I already had every fermenter you could possibly want, so I was too lazy to sell it, so I went, I'm going to use that to brew sour beers. Probably 60% of my brewing is mixed fermentation. There's about 10 to 15 fermenters in my shed of various ages, various types, with various sour and Brett beers in them, and yeah, so here we are. I enter most of the competitions now. I love it. Best way to improve your beer is enter competitions and get feedback. This is a table Brett Saison. So it's one of my favourite things to brew is low alcohol sour and wild beers. One, because I don't want all the beers I have on tap to be sitting at 8-9%, as much as I love double IPAs and big Belgians and stuff.
Yeah,
it's
you're
always
speaking my language there. Yeah.
It's always. I got 5 taps, and sometimes you look at it and 4 of them are over 8%, and you go, it's not ideal for the health side of things, and if you need to drive or anything.
Ethanol is a poison.
Yeah,
but the rest of the beer is usually good for you.
I like table strength beers, so it's a Brett Saison. It's very simple. It's about 50% Vienna malt, 50% wheat. Voyager malt in general for pretty much everything I brew. I use Voyager.
That is spectacular. Clarity in it.
And the culture is my house Brett culture. So for those who don't know, Brettanomyces is wild yeast. There's no bacteria in this beer. This is purely a Brett beer. So it's got Saccharomyces, which is normal yeast, and Brettanomyces in it. My house culture is made up of various bottle dregs plus a Brett Brux culture from White Lab and the Saison de Pont strain. So that's what's in this. And you get a real
amazing fruit
sort of,
and like a little bit of that Brett character,
and then,
but mostly like pineapple and stuff. It's incredible. There's no juice, like there's no fruit to this.
There's no fruit. All the flavor you're getting off an aroma there is from the culture.
Yeah,
it's from that Brett and Sac and that. So
that's a big flavor for. And what did you say the ABV was?
About 3.4%.
That's incredible. So from a 3%, 3.5% beer, it's like you're drinking something that's 6%. Really subdued hop character with it. There's bitterness, but it's not like it's not singing out like
yeah, I mean,
specific type of
it was
hop.
probably 35 IBU when it went into the fermenter, but I find your sour and wild beers, when they age, that bitterness does drop out. I really think Brett loves hops. Like, and that's where you get that funk from. Like, I just don't find I get it if I lightly hop a beer, either sour or Brett.
Is there any special consideration for when you bottle? Are you sugar dosing these bottles?
No.
Or are you just kind of waiting for it to hit like almost attenuate and then you bottle where you still got a little bit of gravity left?
Yeah, no, not even that. So I wait till my beers are where I want them. They've got the final gravity and the flavour I want, which is, which can take, as I mentioned, anywhere from sort of 3 is the shortest I've had for a sour beer up to 18 months plus. I've got some spontaneously fermented beer that's going to sit there for years before I bottle it, but that's another story. I keg it just like you would. I purge the oxygen out of a keg, with CO2 after filling it up with sanitizer. Purge it out. I siphon my sour beer into that purged keg. Force carbonate it at about 40 psi for 24 hours. Then I'll start drinking it once it's sort of, keg takes a couple of weeks to settle down. Once it's settled down, from you guys, I bought a tap cooler a few years ago. And I bottle off half it into sanitized bottles and cap them. Like, simple as that. Everything's force carb. None of my beers are bottle conditioned.
Is that an option for brewers that don't have pressure fillers and things like that? Is it all right to go ahead?
Yeah, it's fine to bottle condition. If you're going to bottle condition an old beer that's sort of 6 months plus, pitch some new yeast when you're doing it, like a tiny little. I'm talking, a lot of people will use like a champagne yeast, like the EC-1118.
Yeah, that's the one.
And like I'm talking maybe 5% of a package of that into your whole batch of 23 litres with your total, with your bottling sugar into a bottling bucket and then bottle off, and it will probably take 6 weeks to bottle condition a sour beer from that.
Yeah.
Don't put more yeast in that because then you'll get a thick yeast layer at the bottom if you do.
Yeah.
What we have here is a lambic or a golden sour ale, more correctly, and this is you're probably your most common sour beer you'll see on the market. Or even in a homebrew comp as well. I'll give you a good pour on this one, Daniel, because you should like this one.
This is definitely a richer, darker color than that first one.
So this is a blend of two different beers. It's 50% Brett Saison, full strength Brett Saison, and 50% of a 12-month-old golden sour ale. Blended together, and then it's been in bottle now, I would estimate probably 8-9 months now as well, cellaring. So it's probably, the two components all up are probably about 18 months old each, right? And they've been together about 7 or 8 months of that. Just
in the quick visual inspection of it, the carbonation on this looks really nice and high, actually, and it's got a great pillowy, fluffy white head, and it's beautiful deep golden color. And the aromas off of that, again, it's fruity, but it's still got that funk to it that you can't really describe it almost any other way. It's just funk. It's Brett, but it's like in a good way. It's done something beneficial to the beer.
A lot of people describe it as horse blanket. I don't think that's the right way. Like it gives it earthy is probably the...
Earthy, a little medicinal maybe, a little herbal sometimes maybe is a way to describe it. In your clean beers when you're experiencing this, because it really just shouldn't be there. And when you get this, it's not an astringency, but it's there if, for some reason sanitation wasn't up or something touched something that shouldn't, who knows. So when you taste that in those beers, definitely it's out of place, but in this sort of a beer, it is unbelievably complementary to how the beer should come together in the glass.
It's interesting as well, this is what I think the number one mistake most people make brewing sour beer, particularly on a homebrew scale, is not putting enough hops in it, because hops hold back bacteria. So this beer here is 50% golden sour, 50% Brett beer. So only 50% of this has got bacteria in it when blended, and the other one was fermented to dryness, so it hasn't got any sour since it was bottled. And both those beers were about 30 IBU. Now, most people will tell you, 5 or 6 IBU for a sour beer, and you're just going to get, particularly if you're using bottled drinks, just rippingly sour off that. Like, I sort of start at 25 IBU minimum for my sour beers, and then I'll often push it up as 35, 40 now with the way my cultures are.
So tell me really quickly, what's the oldest bottle you've kept?
Oldest bottle I kept would be, I think it'd be my first ever sour beer. It's an apricot lambic. I've still got it sitting there. I had one probably 6 months ago or maybe a year ago now. There's probably 2 bottles left. It's not that good, but it's the first, one of the first sours I made, so it's precious to me, and I like tasting it, thinking, okay, it wasn't bad, I know what I need.
Is it going to change maybe?
I think it's probably 3 years old now, so I think it's pretty stable now. Like, I'd be surprised if it was changing much now, but maybe it will.
Okay, that's good. If you're looking for inspiration for any sour brewing, any sour beers, what are your go-tos when you see them on the shelf? You're like, I gotta try that.
In Australia, I think I always try and drink Aussie sour beer as much as I can when I'm buying commercial now. There's awesome beers from America, don't get me wrong, and there's a few places you can get them here. But there's plenty of great local sour beer. So there's 3 breweries I'd always go for. I'd start with Wildflower in Sydney. If I see a Wildflower on the shelf, I always buy it. They've got 2 basic beers, a golden and a amber. They've got their own culture, amazing brewery in Sydney. Boat Rocker down in Brayside, close to where I live, produce amazing sour beers, particularly their Flanders Red and their dark styles with a bit of fruit in them. Just incredible, but they've got a real acid punch, and they're really well balanced, and it's appropriate for the beer, but maybe not your first sour beer. Once you've understood and tasted a few commercial sours, you approach a Boat Rocker and they're just absolutely delicious. Van Diemen Brewing, they produce just stunning spontaneous beer. I think if you, I can't go past them when I see them on the shelf either. And they've got some cool Brett beers and stuff as well. But their spontaneous stuff is,
I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of brewers now looking for Van Diemen stuff. The cool ship idea it's fascinating.
You can do that on a homebrew scale as well. Like,
have you done this?
Yes, but be aware that you're probably going to dump 50% of these that you make. Like,
it's not going to work every time.
Yeah, you could probably make hand sanitizer of it if you wanted to. I would, it's simple, like from a single vessel brewery like a Guten or whatever, brew your wort like you normally would. Once you turn off the element when you go to boiling, when you usually chill it, turn it off, walk away and leave it exposed to the atmosphere overnight. And in the morning it'll be at ambient temperature, pump to a fermenter, and see what happens. And do it when it's cold as well. You've got to do it in midwinter.
So there's a time of year, definitely.
Yeah, you can't do it, well, maybe you can. Give it a go. See what happens if you try it in summer. But there's a lot of bugs active in summer. So usually I try and do it on a night that's going to be sort of 0 to 2 degrees Celsius in Melbourne, which get plenty of them in the middle of winter. Cool. Should we do the final beer we've got here?
Twist my arm, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this is one I've mentioned to you before that I think you'd be reasonably excited about trying. A competition called Brew Wild, which didn't sadly happen last year, wanted to do an Australian ingredient beer. So had to be sour or had to be wild of some variety. So this is a lemon myrtle and saltbush mixed fermentation golden sour ale.
Oh, this one.
Taking on those flavours of a traditional goza, but with Australian ingredients is the idea. So lemon myrtle instead of the coriander, and saltbush instead of salt.
I'm into it. Let's see. Wow, it comes right out. Like you can get the lemon myrtle in the first whiff. It's incredible. There's that perfumey note of the lemon myrtle, and I'm not sure I know what a saltbush smells like.
I don't know that I do either, so I'll put it in there.
Is that more? Is it going to be a flavor thing, you think, or? It's a flavor thing. It's almost soapy and salty, but tart enough to kind of balance out the salt. Too bad this didn't go to competition. This is really
It may, yeah.
stunning. How do you go ahead and apply Saltbush and and lemon myrtle?
Nothing complex about this. Get some fresh from your local, good food grocer or whatever it is, like, small grocer that does that sort of thing, specialty, and throw it straight into the fermenter, leave it for 6 weeks, and then put it into a keg. That was as complex.
This is not a kettle edition, it's a fermenter edition.
This was like dry hopped, basically.
Dry hopping with Saltbush.
And lemon myrtle.
I love it. It's just amazing. Yeah, it really does showcase some of the other spectacular things you could do with mixed fermentation, with sour cultures, with this whole other variety of beer. When you have a beer like this, you're never going to find this in a shop. Well, maybe one day. You're going to be selling this eventually.
We'll see. A lot of people ask me that, but not anytime soon.
But yeah, it's the kind of stuff that you get a brew that you're never going to find anywhere else. So I would wager that home brewers are drinking some of the most innovative beers ever, and a lot of them are magnificent. They're just too small to share with everybody.
I'd agree with that. I firmly believe, and not necessarily in the mixed ferment, but certainly on the clean side of it, I firmly believe well done homebrew is better than well done craft beer. I genuinely believe that.
I think we have to agree on that.
Yeah.
Mostly, no, just thanks for coming and bringing your beers, sharing them with us. And yeah, this has been really fun, really educational for me, because Hayden's actually one of the first people who ever give me a sour beer that I liked, because being the IPA fan that I always have been, that took a bit of challenging, and I was really thrilled that he would come on and join us today, share some of that knowledge. So thanks very much.
No, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me, guys.
And brewers, thanks for watching.